Start recording here. All right, welcome to Code Club, everybody. And I just wanted to show you our uh, code and game challenge here called Botters of the Galaxy, which is pretty cool. I like this one a lot. I've spent a little bit of time on it um, over the past week, and so I just kind of wanted to show off what this does and what the game is all about. So I'm going to go ahead and play my code. And so you've got it's sort of like a um what is that Marvel character called? I don't
Oh,
remember.
Guardians of the
Guardians of the
Galaxy.
Galaxy. Yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah,
sort of like themed around that, and it's got like a multiverse where you have multiple Iron Man and Doctor Strange and all those kind of things. So
that's cool.
all
Oh,
right, yeah, yeah. So I recruited Iron Man and Doctor Strange for mine, and it looks like they had that as well. And
oh, cool.
yeah, yeah. Mike, is that you? Hey, there he is. What's
Hello.
going on, Mike? Welcome.
How are you?
Good, good, good. I was just showing everybody one of my um, one of my bots here, and I guess they're using spells that I didn't know I would have access to. This is Doctor Strange and Iron Man, and this is very much like Dota 2. I don't know if anybody's ever played Dota.
Yeah, I play Dota. It's
So
yeah.
yeah, this has the same kind of dynamic where um, you control heroes and they have spells that they can cast and they can attack uh either the towers. Here's the ranged towers here,
Hmm.
and then they also there's these units that keep streaming out, and they're weaker, but they do a lot of damage when there's a bunch of them. So it looks like I'm probably going to lose this one because you can see he's using his mana, he's using up his spells, and I have not yet figured out how to do that. There's a command for it somewhere, but I don't know how to do it. So because
Hmm.
when I'm looking at um, the game input and the game output, it doesn't look like there's you're supposed to give one line of output, and it doesn't. I don't see anything here that looks like use a spell. So so I don't know. There's probably a way to do it. I'm gonna keep playing with it. I'm sure there's a way to use these new abilities, but because like Iron Man can shoot a fireball, and Deadpool can do a stun, I think. So, stuff like that. So
Hmm.
anyway, this is all the code that it takes to run the bot that I do already have. So this is the Bronze League. I just got upgraded to the Bronze League. There was six Wood Leagues that I had to get through to finally get to this. So um, yeah, it was a lot of coding to just get this far, and then now I'm gonna have to incorporate some new stuff. But anyway, this is fun. This is what you can work up to eventually. And who is it that just joined us? Hello, welcome. Hey, okay, it's Fiorella. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome, welcome. I was just talking a little bit about one of the games on Coding Games called Botters of the Galaxy. It's sort of like a Marvel themed uh, tower defense kind of game. Um, and so these are my bots, and this is a really complicated game. You can buy items, you can attack different things, and it's really in depth. We're not going to go over it today, but I just wanted to kind of show off that this is like one of the things that I've been working on, and it's pretty fun. And after a couple months of practice, you'll be able to do things like this, but it definitely takes some practice. All right, so I'm gonna jump out of that, and I thought we could start with a clash, and then whatever concepts that clash is going to have us incorporate. I'll just kind of give like a brief overview of what's involved in it, and hopefully you guys can help me come up with the answers for this. Some of these clashes I don't even get, so I mean, some of the challenges are really tough. Some of them I can get within a minute, so it just kind of depends on what we're going to be looking at. I'm going to. Is that you, Daryl? Right there? Yeah, Palm Beach State College. All right, you joined
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so he just joined a clash, and If I had been faster with the website of this clash, I could have got you guys in, but I think we've got all our players in there. All right, so but me and Daryl are in this clash. That's a cool image there. That's kind of cool. So all right, so
Dang,
this
it's yeah. Oh, it's from
this is
Portal.
the fastest mode here. So whoever can finish this the fastest is gonna win. But again, don't worry about winning. We're just trying to become better programmers for the next couple months. And these experienced programmers that are playing on here are going to help us to do that. So hopefully they'll show us the code afterwards. All right, so the goal is mirrored time number is a number of 2 digits, X and Y, which if we write like XY, XY, or XY, YX, we get a valid time in hours, minutes. Your task is to print the valid combinations separated by spaces. If no such combination exists, print none. All right, so the results must be unique. So an example, they're going to give us, it looks like they're going to give us an input that is not an integer. So this n is not going to necessarily be an integer. So it says n equals 12. Result is going to be 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 2, 1. So those are the valid ways that we could write that. And then, so it looks like there's really only going to be 2 possibilities at most. Or it could be that only one of the possibilities could work, or it could be that, well, not necessarily. Maybe if it's 0, 1, that might work. We might be able to get more than 2. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So any questions about like what they're asking us to do? I know like executing what the directions are, that's going to be challenging, but like, is anybody confused about what it is that they want us to output?
So they want us to output the numbers in like 12. A little bit. Like are they asking us to get these numbers right, like on the screen next to result by entering in like the n equals 12, or without
Yes.
doing that?
So they're telling us that n is equal to 12. So they're giving us that n value is 12. And it's a string. Notice over here that it says n equals input, and it does not have int in front of it.
Oh.
This would make it an integer. So we're not going to be treating it as an integer. We're just going to be treating it as a regular input. And so there's going to be some conditions that we can apply to this to make sure that it is a valid answer in HHMM format, in that hours minute format. So what are valid what are legitimate values for HH? What
0,
are those?
1.
0, 1 is valid. What else is valid? Like what's a list of valid possibilities for HH?
I guess we can go up to like 12.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to put some constraints here, and I'm going to comment this out because this is just for our reference here. And we don't really need these comments here, and I don't need this. So I'm just going to comment out what our constraints are. So HH has to be between 0, 0 and 1, 2. So it can't be any, 1, 3 would not work, right? For hours, minutes, unless this is military time, in which case maybe it could go all the way up to 23, right? So, or 24, I guess. I don't know. But HH is going to be either that or 0, 0 to 24. So we'll have to experiment with that a little bit because it didn't say anything about military time. So I assume that it's going to be from a 0 to 12 clock, but maybe they threw us a curveball. So we'll have to check on that. All right. And then what about minute? What does that have to be?
That's going to go up to 60, 0, 0 to 60.
0, 0 to actually 59. That's going to stop at 59 because if it was 60, it would just go to the next number. Right.
Right. Okay.
So that one's going to be 0, 0 to 59. All right. So What we could do is we can print. So we're going to have a couple conditions. So one of them is if there's no way to arrange the number that they gave us into into these constraints, then we want it to print what is the required thing to print? None. Okay, so this is going to be else print none. This is not legal here. You see I have these red lines underneath because if I just ran this right now, I'll go ahead and do a test case. It's going to give me an error, but I know I'm going to eventually have this in there, and this is going to say none because this is a situation where if I don't have anything to print because nothing worked, then I'm going to want it to output a none. So, but there has to be like an if statement before that. So if, and I guess I could say if n, and in fact, let's make it an integer. If int of n is less than or equal to 12, then we could print n, and then I don't want there to be any spaces. You see how this format has, this has a instance of the n, and then it has in between another, it has actually two n's in there, but in between them, it's separated by a colon. There's a bunch of different ways I could do this, but probably the easiest would be to just put a plus sign, and then I'm going to put the colon here, and then another plus sign, and then n. So let's try this example. And so it passed the test case because if n is less than 12, less than or equal to 12, then it can handle the 12, 12, right? So that's this result right here. And in the example, it actually gave us 11. So 11 is less than 12. And notice that I turned it into an integer. I took the n, which is a string, and I turned that string into an integer so that it could make a comparison against other numbers, right? But it's probably not going to pass very many of these other cases, but because I haven't included all the other situations that we might come to. So if I do test 2, you can see it passes for 11. If it gives us the n value of 11, then what I have is fine. But if it gives us the value of 12, then I'm only delivering one of the possible situations, right? So I need to give it another of those situations. So maybe what I'll do is, because I want it to reverse, and so I could do if or if, and I'm actually not, I actually don't want to end it right here. So I'm going to put end equals the colon here because we might have more situations. And so if there is more situations, then I want it to express those as well. So I can do, remember how we talked about reversing, Daryl?
Yeah.
So do you remember what the process is to reverse it?
Not exactly.
So I'm going to put
So-
n reverse
Mhm.
equals, so this is going to be a string, and it's going to be n, and then what you do is you put in brackets, you're going to put colon, -1. That's how you reverse the order of the characters in the string.
Okay. Was this yesterday? Or
Yeah, so yesterday it was ::2 because it wanted every other. So if
oh,
you
I don't think I was there for that.
yeah, so
Might have
so
missed
if it's -1, then that means it's going to take, so if let's say n was equal to 1, 2, 3, which they're not going to give us 1, 2, 3, I don't think, but if they did, then what n reverse would equal would be 3, 2, 1, because it's going to, this piece right here where you're putting it in brackets and you're putting : 1,
Mhm.
that means you're going by 1 and you're doing a reverse here.
Okay. And that's how we get 12, 21 in the like, same vein as that.
Right. Yeah. So this
Okay.
this code right here. Hey Gabby, welcome. Oh, she's still connecting audio. All right. So we've still got 4 minutes left here to do this clash. So
Mhm.
let's see if we can get this thing finished. So we've got if the integer is less than 12, then this will work. If n reverse is less than or equal to 12, then let's print n reverse actually I know there's much more efficient ways of doing this, but
Mhm.
and see how it's giving us an error right here that there's like a there's an objection it's giving us here. And the problem is that we're trying to do something. You see how it's giving us all this error message here. And the reason is because I didn't put this into an integer. So it can't compare a string to 12. It can't make a comparison of which one's greater, that string or 12, because I have to turn it into an integer first, and then it'll let me do that comparison. So then it's going to print n reverse and then plus colon and plus n reverse and equals, actually let's not end it there, and let's put a space here, and I'll say why in a second. So let's just try that. So oh, I forgot to make this elif. No, then it didn't do anything. All right, so elif int reverse so now I actually lost my top one, because the problem now is that it's printing it twice, because it's okay if you put it this way. Oh, Gabby, how are you? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hey,
Hi,
welcome.
Daryl. Hi, everybody
Hey,
else.
hey, Gabby.
I'm just
So
trying to get caught up with where you guys are now.
yeah, so I don't think we're going to be able to print finish the code in 2 minutes, or at least not with an explanation. So
Mhm.
but I'll just go ahead and give you like a overview anyway, because
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be able to get you can see most of the people that were doing this are still kind of stumped. There's a few that were able to solve it, but basically what's going on is that we want to take whatever n they give us, which is going to be a string, because it didn't put integer in front of this. It just is giving us a string, and then we're also going to reverse it, because we want to print out as many cases as we can where it's going to produce a hour, minute format that's going to be valid. So another thing we could do is check. We could just have it cycle through every combination. We could do, and I'm not going to have enough time to implement this, but just to give you an idea, we could implement a function to, let's say, check if valid, and we could give it n, and then basically what that would do is it would check it with these criteria here. So the hour has to be between 00 and 12, or I don't think it's doing military time, so I'm going to leave that off. So it has to be, the hour has to be between 00 and 12, and the minute has to be between 00 to 59. So that's the constraints of what that would be. Yeah, so this is just going to give us a 0%. We're not going to be able to get any of those, unless maybe I'll just take this part off, and then it should give it to us, I think. So we'll at least get the, oh, no, I messed up the example. What did I do here with the example? Oh, because this.
Oh,
Okay, so we're
Yes.
gonna at least beat some of the other players here in the next 5 seconds because we got one of the test cases. So it's gonna ask if we want to submit our current code or last play. Let's do our current code, and we're gonna submit that. I think we should probably get at least like one or two cases. So hopefully we get more than 0%. We'll share code. So let's see what some of the the guy who does Python did not share. That's a bummer.
That would have been helpful.
That would have been helpful.
That's
But we could still look at JavaScript and we can look at C# as well. So yeah, we got one of the test cases. So that's fine. So let's see here. So read line is a lot like input. So what was being done here is this is being put into a if we're going to look at JavaScript and kind of translate a little bit the ideas that they did from JavaScript into Python, what they were doing, it looks like they were constructing a list here, and they were mapping v to plus v. I think that probably reverses it. So I think they probably took whatever the value was that they were given, and then they also did the reverse. I'm guessing that's what that does. And then they were checking whether x is less than 10 and 0 plus x. Yeah, I don't read JavaScript, so it's hard to make sense of this.
Can we look at the C one?
Can we look at the what?
Or is it only, oh, never mind. I thought it was C, but it's C sharp.
Yeah, let's look at C# though and just see what they did. So just to get an idea here. So what they console.writeLine is the same as print. And so and console.readLine is the same as input. So this is a string n that's input. So that's what that would look like in Python. It's just n equals input. And then print. And so they did this with really just one statement here. It's a very long statement. That is not beautiful code here. This is getting
Wow.
the job done, but it is not pretty. So
Right.
first of all, they were checking whether the length was less than 2, and then they were parsing whether it was greater than 24. So I guess maybe it was military time, because 24 is what they used instead of 12. And then over here, okay, I'm going to show you in Python what they did was a really good way. I'm going to show you the analogous idea there. So Python, I go to onlinepython.com, and it has ads and stuff, but you don't have to download anything. So it's a IDE that just runs in the browser, which is kind of nice. It probably has limited imports. I don't usually import a lot of modules, but if you want to like do anything intricate, this is not a great platform for it. But if you want to just like throw down some quick code, this is a good place for it. So what I wanted to show you was, let me remind myself here.
Was there a
Yes.
reason why he did n length less than 2? Because don't we want 2 digits for the time?
Well, yes. And so if it was less than 2, what he's doing is he's adding in a 0.
If it was less than 2, he's adding a 0.
Mhm.
Like a placeholder then?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's what he's doing, because if so let's say n equals, just hypothetically, n equals 4, then that would be 4, 4, right? Which actually we would want that to be 4, 0, 4, right? In order to make it valid. And
Right.
then also for 40,
Mhm.
that would be valid. But 40 would not be valid. Right? Or if it was n equals 1, then this would be valid, and this would be valid, And this would be valid. And this would be valid. So there's actually 4 in that case that would work. But we would have to add in our zeros in order to make it fit. I think that's what he was doing. So
Jesse,
yes.
I'm sorry, I had a question. How come
Mhm.
that works with 1, but when you typed in 4, you said it didn't work for 40 at the bottom? How come that works, but this doesn't? Or how
Yeah,
come that didn't work, but this doesn't?
so there's no clock setting where that would be acceptable, because remember that we constrained the hours to be 00 to 1 2, right? Because 12
Mhm.
o'clock is as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't go any higher than it. So 40 is not, there's no 40 o'clock,
Oh yeah, okay.
right?
Sorry.
So it's because,
Yeah.
no, that's a good question. It's because we're
Yeah.
dealing with clocks. It's specifically because we're dealing with clocks that is a constraint.
Okay. Could we make it so that it could be 40? Could we make our own like clock time so it can go up to 40? Is that possible? Or does it only ever stops at if we're talking about regular time, only stops at 12 when it comes to
Yeah,
hours
yeah,
and okay.
yeah. I mean, you could do military time goes up to 24, for example. So military time
Mm-hmm.
doesn't stop at 12. It keeps going
Mm-hmm.
up to a maximum
24.
of
Yeah.
24.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are other ways of measuring time that you could use,
Mm-hmm.
that might allow for that. But for
Mm-hmm.
the hour, minute format that they were looking for,
Mm-hmm.
that would have stopped at 12, I think.
Okay.
So anyway, what I wanted to show was this print f, and then so let's have it print this. I think it's just print f, and then maybe I can have n, and I'll put in another variable like a, and I'll call that I'll just say hello there. Okay. So then now let me print this and see if that works. Oh yeah, I got all this junk in here. That's not part of it. Invalid syntax. I think I forgot to put the unexpected character after line continuation. Oh, I didn't give it a. All right. I don't use printf very often, but it's a way of. Let me just look that up in the docs here. So f strings. Okay, so this is what that would look like. It's going to be. Oh yeah. I need the. That's what was wrong. I have to give it I have to give it the quotation after this. Okay, so I think this will work. Yeah. So I can put in variables directly into a print statements string. And so like an example of this was I could change this over here. And now when I write this, it's going to say 6 instead of 1. Right. So it's a way of being able to format this nicely. And so what he was doing with his is he was formatting it so that it would be like one of them's going to be 0 1, for example, and then another is going to be 1 0, for example. And then what he's doing is he's putting the colon in right here, and it's just treating it as part of the string. So that's another way of doing what I had done, which was, remember, I had put plus signs to separate each of these. So these will produce the same thing, But this is in many cases a more elegant way of doing it, where you're
Mm.
putting the you're basically making it a string, but these brackets are allowing you to insert variables into that string. So it can be kind of convenient, especially if you have to fill it, like if you have a statement you want to make, like let's say print, and we'll do it as a print f. There were and I'll make this n people at Code Club today, but I would like to see that next time. So you could put more complicated statements together, and it's just a nice way of being able to insert variables directly into that statement. So that's what printf does.
Okay. So, Jesse, oh,
Mhm.
sorry. But
Yeah.
you would need both print statements or all three print statements to get what you want, right?
No,
Or
no,
would
no,
you
no.
just
You're only going to need one of those print statements. What I was doing was just expressing
Mhm.
different ways of doing the same thing. So I had done it like what's on line 5, and the guy
Mhm.
whose code that we were looking at had been doing it like what's on line 4. And I
Okay.
was just elaborating on line 6 what the capabilities of that are and why it's
Mhm.
because if I wanted to do the same thing the way I did in my first method, then I would have to have something like this. There were, and then I put a plus sign, and then this wouldn't be in brackets then. It would just be, I could still get it to do the same thing. It's just a more obnoxious amount of syntax that I have to put into this print statement in order for it to do the same thing. So I'll run this again. And you can see it still does the same thing, but I have to put spaces and pluses. So this is a way of embedding those values in without having to do all of that formatting.
Okay.
So the braces around the variable is supposed to signify a space on both sides of the variable? Or no?
No,
We just need that for the printf specifically
yeah,
to input a variable.
that's right. Yeah, no, there
Okay.
would be no spaces, and if you remember, look at this time here where it's got 0 1:10. Notice that
Mhm.
there's no spaces there. What does put a space in between is a comma. So if I do print of n comma a, then now when I run that, see how there's a space in between 0 1 and that, and I could put the colon. If instead of plus signs I had put commas, then that's going to really space it out.
Okay.
Because it's putting spaces for each time you put a comma.
So the actual spaces in the code don't do anything though, because you have like comma space A. So that
Right.
space
So
between the comma and the A it doesn't do anything.
right. So I can space this way out, and you'll see that it does not change. That's
Mhm.
exactly right. Yeah. The spacing in between, that's not part of the string. See how the string is ending. This particular string goes from here to here, and then there's a space that is not part of that string. That's just for my own formatting preferences as the programmer, but it's not going to display on the screen any differently.
Okay.
So it's customary to put a space in between operations and between a lot of these things, but some programmers don't put the space and they just cram it all together like this, and that still runs exactly the same. Every time I do that, it's displaying the same thing because Python doesn't care how many spaces there are in between that.
Okay.
What it does care about is if there's spaces in front of a line. So see how I have print here, and then I'm going to indent by putting a space here. Watch how upset Python gets here. It's gonna throw me an error. It's gonna say, wait a minute, you can't put a space in front of that. Because what spaces signify in Python is that there's a code block immediately following. So this code block on line 7 belongs to line 6. And print is not able to handle that. It's like what you would want to see is something like if 5 is greater than 3, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to print 5 is greater than 3. Else print 5 is not greater than 3. So let's see which one it prints. No surprise there, 5 is greater than 3, right? Because what's happening is that there's a condition here. It's saying if this is true, then here's what I want you to do, Python. So like the indentation is saying that this print statement is depending on this. It's like if this thing's true, then this is what happens. Right? So the indentation is almost acting like the word then. All right. So you
Kind of
don't have to,
reminds me of like loops as well.
Yeah,
So
of course.
usually in C we'll use braces,
Yep.
where you don't technically have to indent, but it looks better.
Yeah, so like that's true. Yeah. So a lot of the stylistic things that are requirements in Python are stylistically helpful in other languages like C, even though they're not necessarily required. And then there's other things in Python that you should do to make it neater. So for example, like I can write number, and then I'm going to put int equals input. Let's say. So what I'm doing is I'm declaring that there's a number and it's an int. And I don't have to write this part that it's an integer. I can just do this. I could just write number equals integer of input. And that would be fine. Or I can put this definition here saying that this number has to be an integer. So it's kind of like when you're doing the declaration of a variable in other languages, that is done in two parts. First, you declare the variable, then you set its value. In Python, you're doing it as one step. Excuse me, as you're doing it as one step. You're declaring the variable of number, and then you're obtaining its value with this equals integer input part. And so the point I was making again, in most languages, you would have to set number as an integer first before you could use it. But with Python, it's still good practice, but you can get away with not putting it and it would still run the code.
And it's interesting to see that you can sort of get the input also on the same line that you're declaring the variable, which is like strange, because in C you have to declare the variable and then a scanf statement is separate if you want the input. Like it's not together, but I like how Python kind of makes coding a bit easier.
Yes, it definitely does. And then one of the other things about the fact that you don't have to label what that is. So let's say that I put it as an integer. Or actually let's say that I put it as 50. Let's say I put number as 50. And then I say print, and then I say number equals number divided by 3. And then I'm going to print number. What do you guys think it's going to display?
50 divided by 3.
Whatever 50 divided by 3 is. Okay. And is it
Yeah.
going to be an integer or is it going to be a float?
An integer, since it's integer division, right?
Let's see. Let's find out. So I'm going to run this and it gives me a float. So you see how this is not 16, it's 16.66666, and it rounds it to 8 at the end. So
okay. Is that why it's a float? Because it keeps going? Is that why?
yes, anything with a decimal is going to be a float. And actually I could do print. I haven't done this for a while, so I'm hoping that I do the right. I'm hoping I do the right thing there. No, that's not the right thing. Maybe I have to put. that. No, I have to do type number, maybe that. Yeah. Okay. So it says that it's a float. Class equals class is float, but I defined it up here, and it should have been an integer, right? So let's say that I leave that number equals number divided by 3, and I run it there. Now it's a class of integer if I'm not doing this operation here. So that's really interesting, isn't it? It's actually
Yeah.
figuring it out on the fly whether it should be an integer or whether it should be a float, depending on the context of what my program is having it do. So it turns it into a float to accommodate this situation here, where it's the number is 50. I'm dividing 50 by 3. It doesn't go in evenly. I get a decimal, and so it says, well, I mean, we're getting a decimal. Let's turn it into a float, and that's exactly what it does. It turns it into a float. I could still force this to remain an integer by
Mhm.
putting int and then putting that in parentheses there, and you can see that it's now rounding it down to 16. So it's actually not rounding it to the nearest, it's rounding it down when I use the integer function, and it's remaining as a class integer. But if I don't put this int function in front of it, then it will Python will figure out what the best it'll look over the entire code and then say, okay, this variable would be best as a float. So it's going to make it a float automatically for you.
Even
So-
if it was like 16.9, would it still be rounded down to 16?
Let's find
Like
out.
16.
Yeah. Let's find that out. So print. So I'm going to put, let's say 16.9, right? Is our number. So number equals 16.9. And then I'm going to print the integer of 16.9, and let's find out what that is going to do. So yeah, it rounds it down. No matter how close it is, it's going to round it down, not up, when you use the int function.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
Cool. And it's either the int function or the sharp function right in front of the number.
I think that was for a comment, to comment
Oh.
out the line when you have
Yeah.
the like
That's right.
hashtag or a pound sign.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes. Yeah. So
Okay.
if I use this hashtag, this is
Mm.
for comments, and the computer won't read it.
Okay.
So I run
Is
that.
that
It doesn't.
single line only or multi-line as well?
That is single line, but if you wanted it to do multi-line, you can do 3 sets of quotations, and then here's stuff we have in between. It can be multiple lines, and then 3 quotations, and run it, and it still runs it because it's ignoring all this.
Mhm.
But if I
Okay.
didn't have that commented out, then when I run it, it's like, what are you talking about? Right? Because I wrote
Right.
that in English. I didn't write that in Python. So, but I can remove entire sections, commenting them out by doing that, and it'll run fine.
Would you say
Okay.
Python is sort of like a more intelligent language, dare I say? Because it's identifying what type of variable you're defining. You didn't say integer or float or that it's even a number. Like 16.9, even though it is a number, could be, you could want it to be a string instead, since you can set numbers in a string. So like
Yeah.
it seems a bit smarter than the other languages.
Well, so I think of it in terms of trade-offs. So other languages are in many cases much faster than Python, because Python is taking some time to compute all of these typecasts that were not explicitly declared. It's like, okay, I got to think about this. What should this variable be? And it's running some computations, and that costs you time. And so, a Python program might be 10 times slower than a C program, than the same program in C, depending on what you're having it do. If you've got a lot of if you've got if it's not really well optimized, then you can burn a lot of time with a Python program that would be unnecessary to spend using C. And so that's why if you're looking at enterprise solutions, I'm talking about like big companies, Google, Facebook, those kind of companies. Like if they have billions of users, then all those microseconds add up. And like if you don't want a Google search to take 20 seconds because people will click off, right? So
Okay.
Python would not be a good language for some uses, some use cases, some applications. But it's a fantastic language for other applications. So it really just depends on what it is that you want it to do. So I don't think of one language as being necessarily better or worse than another language. I think of it as being optimal for some solutions, and then another language might be better at other things. So C definitely is still useful even after 40, 50 years because it runs fast, right? And like you can get down to really low level code using C, and it's just such a legacy language. Like there's so much that's already written in it that it's a good language to know. But that's a long way of saying, yeah, I like Python better.
Gotcha.
For my own personal uses, I find it much easier to make sense of what's going on with Python. C, I tried to learn and it was very confusing. I didn't want that to be like my first language because I want to get the concepts down without having so much syntax that I have to focus on. And I want to just get the concepts down.
Right, makes sense.
All right. Do you guys think we have time for one more clash?
Sure.
All right,
I'm
let's go
down.
for it. And I also want to really make this point that it's fantastic to get this kind of exposure and be part of the clashing when I do it, but you're never going to see really strong improvement until you start doing the clashes. So don't expect to win the clashes, but unless you practice it yourself, you're not going to see nearly as much progress. It's sort of like juggling. I think of it as like juggling, where you can watch videos about juggling. You can watch somebody else do it. You can, you can be at the front row while they're doing it, but it's only when you actually try to do it and the balls fall to the ground many, many times. That's how you get better at juggling, is by practicing and making the mistakes. So you have to make the mistakes yourself in order to get better at programming. Now let's go ahead. With that said, let's go ahead and do a clash together, and then hopefully you guys will be inspired to do a bunch of clashes on your own before the next time that we meet. So
I was actually doing one of the clashes. I was trying the site out, and they wanted me to create like a function that could calculate factorials.
Nice. Okay.
And that was I liked it because I liked the math ones better, but it was a challenge for sure to
Yes.
print out every term in the factorial and also the results.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the other thing is, as I'm talking this out, I tend to do a lot worse on the ones that I am talking about rather than the ones that I just do. It's sort of like it's sort of like when I'm trying to identify all the parts of speech or something like that, and like really thinking about my grammar and sentence structure and stuff like that. I don't do that when I just talk. And so whenever I just talk, like I say what I want to say, right? But if I was really thinking about all the nuts and bolts of what I'm doing, that sort of gets in the way of the flow. And so, and I find that in my programming too. But that's good. I like doing this too because it forces me to get better at thinking out loud. So that's a good thing. So, all right. During the summer days, the ants work very hard to collect food for winter, and the grasshopper just sleeps all day. When winter comes, the ant stays in their houses. They share and eat food, but the grasshopper has nothing to eat. Okay, so the grasshopper's health is G. By day, his health decreases by E, and eating one piece of some food increases his health by 1. Now, your task is to find the health of the grasshopper after D days. If his health is below or equal to 0, output dead. Note, each day the ants give the same amount of food to the grasshopper. This reminds me of that cartoon Ants. where the ants have to give the food to the grasshopper. All right, so what we're going to receive as input is an integer d, and that d is the number of days, right? That's after b days. And then line 2 is going to be 3 space separated integers, g, e, and a. And g is the grasshopper's health. It's going to be decreasing by a certain amount, which is e, and eating 1 piece of food increases its health by 1. So a is the amount of food. So if there's enough food, then the grasshopper can eat 1 piece of food to increase his health by 1 each day. All right, so and then of course, if the remaining health is 0 or less, then we're going to output dead. All right, so I'll turn it over to you guys if you have any ideas, and then I'll try to grind out some code here if not.
What is the input dot split for? Is that just to give us space for G, E, and A, even though they're declared all in the same line, or?
Yeah, so what let's go ahead over to where was the, here it is. Okay, so if I have let's say I have a string equals 23, 48, and hello. So, and notice that it's space separated, right? So then form to a list is going to, and I'm going to take string and I'm going to split this. And then let's print form to a list. And so you see how it separates it into individual elements. And actually, that's a terrible name. I don't like that, form to a list. I'm just going to call this, instead of calling it string, I'm going to call I'll just call it A. Let's say this will be, so print A. And it'll do the same thing. Now, what if I wanted to do the element with an index of 2? What do you think it's going to print if I do print A and then index 2?
The 3? Just the number 3? Or
Number 3? And you're saying that because this right here is the 3?
or is it like, because I'm thinking index, wait, actually is it index starts at
4?
0, so it would be a
Index starts at 0. Index starts at 0. So you're thinking
does
it'll
that
be
work?
this space right here, right? So
Yes.
let's see. Let's go ahead and run this. So it prints hello.
Oh,
Look at that.
okay.
Why did it
Uh-oh.
print hello? Any idea why it printed hello?
Oh, maybe because it counted 23 and 48 as 0 and 1. And
That's
hello
right.
is 2.
That's right.
Oh.
So what split does is it splits it along whatever, and if you don't put anything in, it splits it along a space. So you can see that when I run this, nothing changes because it automatically treats it as a space if there's nothing there. So if you just have
Oh, okay.
Cool.
so what it's doing is it's splitting it here and here because that's where there's spaces, and it's turning it into 1, 2, 3 different elements, right? And so that's why when I print, so I'll do this first line as print A. So it's splitting it into 23, 48, and hello. And so when I ask it to print A of 2, this is A of 0, this is A of 1, and this is A of 2. So it says, okay, hello is what's there as A of 2. And it prints hello.
Okay.
Right?
Awesome.
So and I instead of having this as a list the way it is right now with A, I could make this A, B, C, and let's do it that way. And now I'm going to still do print A and I'm going to print C. And let's run that. So now it's doing A is 23 because that was the first, whatever the first value is, it's storing that as the variable A. And then whatever the second is, that's storing it as B. And then whatever the third thing is, that's storing it as C. So it's still, so A of 2 is the same thing as C in this case. And now what if I did print A of 2 now. What do you guys think it's going to say?
The same thing. Hello again?
Wait, but A is 23, so how do you have A of 2?
That's the issue, right? So I print that, and it gives me a
Oh,
trace back because A is now defined as the first element of that list. A is no longer remember that I didn't typecast it. And so Python is figuring out as we go what it should be. And it's looking at this and it's saying what it should be is a string. It should be a string of 23. So I could print A and then type A, and it's going to say that it's a string instead of, yeah, I actually do want it to execute that. So I'm going to go ahead and print that. So see how 23 is class string. And that's because I didn't put int there. All right. So I didn't turn it into an integer. So it's saying that A is a string and its value is 23. And the reason is because it was the first element in that list, but it never recorded it as a list. It recorded it as 3 separate variables, A, B, and C. All right. So that was a lot.
okay.
that was a lot. Let's go back to this though and see if we can do this clash and actually get an answer here. So we're going to, and actually we're just about out of time. So at least for Code Club, not for this clash. We've still got 6 minutes, but we're out of time for Code Club. But I'll try to finish this real quick, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got 3 space-separated integers, and we already have those, G, E, and A. So let's see here. We've got the grasshopper's health will decrease by E each day. And A is the amount of food. So let's do, what we could do is kind of like cycle through days. So while the grasshopper's health G is greater than 0, what's going to happen? So while G is greater than 0, what we're going to do is day by day, his health decreases by E. So G is going to decrease by E. So this is, I'm going to do, well, G is greater than 0 and D is greater than 0. Because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to decrease the days as well. So D is going to decrease by 1. And what I'm writing here, this D is less than or D is equal to D minus 1. These 2 lines right here mean the same thing. Excuse me. The top way is a more concise way of expressing it, but it's the abbreviation for D equals D minus 1. So I'm just subtracting 1 from the day, and I'm subtracting E from the life of the grasshopper. And then if A is greater than 0, then I'm going to add back a life. So that's going to be G plus equals 1. And I'm going to take away from A. So A minus equals 1. And if not, then it's just going to ignore that because there's no food to eat. And then what we have to output is an integer, which is the remaining health of the grasshopper, or a string, which is dead. So I'm going to print the G, which is the remaining health of the grasshopper. But I only want it to print that. So I'm going to put if G is greater than 0, then I want it to print G. And else print dead. So let's see if that works. No. Okay. So this says found 91, but expected 110. So why is it doing that? So
Hmm.
eating one piece of some food increases his health by 1. So when winter comes, the ants do their house, they sure and eat food, but the grasshopper has nothing to eat. Grasshopper is also cheese. Anybody see the problem? If you do, let
I'm
me know.
looking. I'm looking. Yeah, because it's only like a couple numbers off. So maybe.
So the grasshopper's health is starting off at 10,
Mm,
and
850. Maybe add. Maybe like make like A plus equals 1. Maybe.
oh, you know what? I have an idea. Because it looks like he's eating all of the food, right? That 20, because notice that his health ends higher than what it started at. So
Mm-hmm.
I think what I should do is I'm going to take this part out. I think it's handling the food differently than what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take G equals G plus equals A. Actually, I'll just add
Mm-hmm.
A, whatever that amount of food is. I'm going to add it to the grasshopper's health, and then I'm going to take away.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see if that works. So that works. Okay, let's see if that, no. Okay, so that doesn't work now for the other situations. So I still got a minute. I don't have much time, but I'm going to put, actually, I'm going to comment this out. And what I want it to do is print all these variables. So print D, G, E, A, because I want to know what I'm working with here to try to figure it out. So, okay. His health starts off as 0, and that's why,
Mm-hmm.
or no, the days is 0. His health G is 10. E is 30. And okay, so if G, so why isn't it, if it's expecting 30, why isn't it printing 30? Let's see what it's printing. Printing 10. So G plus equals A. Well, G is greater than 0 and D is greater than 0. But it shouldn't enter this loop because the D is not greater than 0. So if G is greater than 0, print Z. Yeah, I don't know. This guy got it though. Let's view his code. All right. So he said for I in range 1 to D plus 1, G plus equals E. No, I'm sorry, G minus equals E, right? That makes sense. And the G plus equals A. Oh, he's gaining that each day. I didn't realize that each day he was gaining one. Okay. That was my misunderstanding with what was happening. So every day that he's eating food, he's gaining that amount of food. He's not gaining 1 unit. They worded it in a way that confused me, so I didn't realize that that's what they wanted me to do, is add A to each. That's okay. Doesn't really matter. This is what I love about Coding Game, is that there's no such thing as a bad grade in Coding Game. You can just figure stuff out. If you end up doing badly in a match, it doesn't hurt you in any way. It doesn't negatively impact your score on anything. Everything is just purely a learning experience. So I find that fun. All right, so I guess that's it for this time around, and I'll see you. Oh, I wanted to mention again, we need officers. So anybody who's watching this or anybody who's here right now, just keep in mind that if you want to volunteer for president, vice president, treasurer, or secretary, we need those positions for the club. and we'll probably have like official elections at the end of the semester. But we need to have some folks to volunteer to fill those positions as an interim capacity in the meantime. So let me know if you're interested in doing that. And I'll see you guys next time.
Later, Jesse. Thanks again.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Later.
Bye.